Hello, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. If we haven't met before, I'm Maggie. I'm the founding community product manager for DataHub. Welcome to our end of the year town hall. We have a ton of really amazing stuff to work through. So I'm going to go ahead and get things started over here. Just one moment, please. Alrighty. So welcome to our town hall. We have a handful of items to work through today. I will give a very brief update on our community and project, just overall how things are moving along. Shashanka is going to join us to talk through what's in store for DataHub and AI, kind of all the things that we have in flight and what we're looking towards in 2025. We have an amazing case study from the team at Grab. They are based out of Singapore, so I think it's like 3 in the morning for them. So they've pre-recorded that, but we will kind of share what they have done between or using DataHub with some LLMs for context-rich search. And then I am going to walk us through some new ways that we can customize metadata within DataHub to really just make it a really robust metadata enrichment experience for you. So let's talk community and project updates. Our DataHub community continues to grow like crazy. We have surpassed 12,300 members in our Slack community over the past. So it's been a while since we've had a town hall. So this is, I was looking at kind of all the Slack activity since our last town hall, which I believe was in September. And we've sent nearly 30,000 messages just in the past few months. It's just been a tremendous amount of activity happening in there. A lot of that, if you are in our Slack community, you have probably seen our AI chatbot called Run LLM. There's always Run LLM has turned out to be just a really useful resource for folks to, kind of self-serve troubleshooting, to anything from like troubleshooting errors or kind of a step-by-step guide to do something in DataHub, but then also some really great information around kind of understanding core concepts of DataHub, et cetera. So I highly recommend, if you haven't already, to check out Run LLM. Over the past few months, we've had a ton of events as well. On a weekly basis, we have, actually, I have a different slide for that, one second. So just in the past few months, we've had over 1,100 attendees to various events. If you are familiar, or if you've heard of our Metadata and AI Summit, we had a really wonderful turnout there. And then on a weekly basis, so really what we're trying to do is make sure that folks have resources on an ongoing basis and touch points with us. So on every Tuesday, I bring in core engineers from our core team, and we have a live troubleshooting session with our DataHub office hours. We've had tremendous turnout there. I think anywhere from 20 to 25 people joining us on a weekly basis. And then so if you want some kind of hands-on or live troubleshooting support, highly recommend joining us for those sessions. Any and all questions related to DataHub are welcome. And then on Wednesdays, I host a session called DataHub Decoded. This is really a place for folks to bring questions that are top of mind for them in their kind of, regardless of where they are in their DataHub experience. So I try to keep those really flexible and free form to make sure that we're tailoring content that's useful for folks. So if you are new to DataHub and you just kind of want to get a sense of what you can do with it, if you have deployed DataHub and now you're looking for strategies about how to roll it out to your end users, or if you're looking for best practices, Wednesdays are a great session for that. Bring any and all questions and we can work through those. And then last but not least, on Thursdays, we have our weekly DataHub Cloud demo. You will notice on here, there's a slightly different URL for this. But yeah, if you're curious about what's happening with DataHub Cloud, that's always a great spot to jump on in. As I mentioned, a couple months ago, we had our Metadata and AI Summit. It was so amazing. Of course, I'm biased because, I was part of the group that put it together, but we had just some amazing speakers across the board from teams at Apple, teams at Netflix, Meta. We had a wonderful panel with folks from the DataHub community kind of talking about best practices and rolling out DataHub. So folks joined from Slack, checkout.com, and Grab. So if you were not able to join us live, all of those recordings are available on our YouTube channel. So please do check those out. One other thing we want to call out here, we just this week, the team over at One House published a incredibly comprehensive guide on kind of all things data catalogs and kind of the landscape, how to evaluate various options, really defining what these options are, where they excel. Of course, we're thrilled to say that DataHub came out on top. But if you are kind of new in your DataHub your data catalog and or DataHub kind of journey, and you're not really sure kind of like what the product landscape or tooling landscape looks like, highly recommend checking this one out. They did a tremendous job in kind of breaking down all things data catalogs, data governance in open source, but then also in paid offerings as well. All right, let me do a time check really quick. So we have DataHub 0.15.0 is coming up before the end of the year. There is a ton of a ton of changes in this one. We had 66 contributors to this release, which is just outstanding. 26 of those contributors were first-time folks. So I'm always so thrilled to see that people are continuing to show up, really like help move the project forward. It's just, I think this is honestly the highest ratio of first-time contributors to repeat contributors that we've seen maybe ever. So super tremendous work there. Of course, we have 20 wonderful repeat contributors and then 20 wonderful code maintainers from the Acquil data team. I'm going to fly through some of these highlights here just because we have a lot of, honestly, just like way higher value content to get through, but we will have detailed release notes along with that release so you can dig into it. But on the user experience side of things, 0.15.0 is going to introduce a really, really easy to use UI workflow to create, edit, apply, and manage structured properties, and also configure how those are displayed within DataHub. If this doesn't quite make sense yet, stick around. This is exactly what I'm going to be talking about in the metadata customization session towards the end of our time together. In terms of our developer experience, we've introduced some big improvements to our kind of like data cleanups workflows, just making sure that you can kind of configure your retention and deletion settings and kind of keep your data the back end kind of nice and tidy. We've also added Git back into our ingestion base to support the Git Python module. On our CLI, we have improved support for undoing soft deletes. There's also within the code base, we've addressed some open high critical vulnerabilities with SQL lineage and SQL parse by swapping into using our own parser. The good news is that our parser, I believe, and Herschel can keep me honest here, but I believe that our parser is actually a higher precision, so that's fantastic. And then one last thing is that we added logging for actor earns when there's unauthorized access, so you have more kind of visibility into that activity. On the metadata ingestion side of things, we've introduced 3 new sources, Preset, Neo4j, and Dreamio. So if those are part of your data stack, you can now integrate with those through our normal ingestion flow. And then in terms of just kind of like miscellaneous ongoing improvements, it's amazing. I've lost track of how many ingestion sources we have. It's well over 70, I think, at this point, if not 65. And so a lot of what we're continually doing, and this is both from the kind of core team from Acquil Data, but also within the DataHub community as well, is that we're continually pushing improvements both on our existing ingestion sources, both on kind of performance tuning, so making sure that ingestion runs are as performant as possible, but then also just overall precision improvements in terms of our lineage detection. So on a performance side, we have overall improvements to processing around column level lineage. We all know that column level lineage gets really complex really fast, and really high volume complexity there. So we're continually kind of fine tuning the performance there. There's also improvements to ingestion for both Iceberg and Fivetran. We've bumped up our support for Airflow and Great Expectations. And then for folks that are using DBT, if you're creating DBT tests for across multiple tables, we're handling that more gracefully in our backend and front end. And then in terms of improved lineage detection, just a few to call out. Fivetran, we're preventing duplicates there. Snowflake, we now have support for lineage detection for rename and swap queries, as well as hybrid tables. MS SQL, we have support for extracting lineage from stored procedures. And then last but not least, for BigQuery, we are automatically detecting lineage between BigQuery and GCS. Whew. I know that was a lot, and I know that I also talk very fast, so I apologize for that. But like I said, our release notes for 015 will have a comprehensive overview of everything that we're shipping. This is not even scratching the surface of it. There's, I think, 508 commits in this release, so it is a monster one. And like I said, we will be getting that out, I believe, next week. If it will be before the end of the year. I think we're targeting next week. So keep an eye on the announcements channel in DataHub Slack. That's where we'll be sharing the news when that is ready to go. All right, so I'm going to hand things over to Shashanka. Shashanka, if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen, if that's okay.
So hi, everyone. Welcome to DataHub Town Hall. I know a few of you are first-timers here. And if you are a first-timer here, you might be wondering why Maggie was speaking so fast. And that's usually because I speak very slowly. And she knows that I have a lot of slides to get through. And she's very nervous that we're not going to end on time like we usually don't. So with that said, welcome to DataHub Town Hall. I'm Shashanka, co-founder and CTO at Acryl and founder of the DataHub project. And what I'll walk you through really quickly, hopefully, is where DataHub is going in 2025 when it comes to AI. And what I've done really is shortened my keynote from the Metadata and AI Summit, where I spoke about governance in the age of AI and why this is such a unique moment for the data catalog industry and for metadata systems in general. And I'll try to focus it on the things that we are doing for AI in 2025. And please keep the chat interactive. There's a lot of folks in the from the core team that are here. So feel free to ask your questions as I go along and we can address them as we go. Cool. So unless you have taken a sabbatical for the last year, you would probably know this already. We are in the midst of really a third wave of shifts in how data is getting done. There's a huge shift that has happened in the last 6 to 12 months, and a lot of it has been powered by generative AI. In fact, according to a lot of these specialized industry analysts, most of the enterprises are really looking to operationalize AI by 2025. That's actually next year or in a month. And so what the reason this has happened is really two big moments. First, AI has suddenly become a lot more accessible. A lot of us, we're part of big tech companies, and AI was kind of a specialized science. You would have to go through graduate school and learn specific capabilities, and then you would get onboarded onto large organizations with a lot of data and a lot of capabilities. And that's when you would start using and building predictive AI. But with the rise of AI as a service, pretty much, API providers, open source models have come up, and accessibility has become not a problem anymore. And that has really meant a lot of AI-powered experiences are almost hitting production. And that really has created a huge rush for creating AI-powered applications, not only generative AI-powered, but also classical AI-powered experiences. And at the same time, at the top level boards, there's a huge initiative around being AI-powered and otherwise being extinct or being a dinosaur. And no one wants to be that. So organizations are really rushing to be AI-powered or being left back in the dust. With that, some interesting problems have emerged. So next slide, one of the top worries that organizations have about the rapid rise of AI-driven development is legal, privacy, compliance, etc. A lot of the governance folks are really worried about this. They think that this is going to be their top issue for the next 2 years. And they're not as worried about whether the foundation models will keep up or not. They're more worried about once all of that happens, how are we going to keep these models in line, and how are we going to make sure that they're working well and not producing garbage data. So what do we have to do about it? So next slide. We think that this particular moment actually, instead of being a huge problem for data governance, is actually a huge opportunity. Because the first moment where generative AI and governance come together is when you can enable new capabilities because you have generative AI as not just an accelerant, but also as something that is driving you to production. So next slide, Maggie. So if you think about the governance problems that have usually existed in the past, they've usually been in two categories. First, top-down mandates have been hard to secure. Governance is usually chronically underfunded. And secondly, the amount of human labor required to get it right has been very high. And so, the real context is only known to people doing day-to-day work. There's a lot of manual labor from end users. And that has led to kind of this problem feeling like an impossible hill to climb. But interestingly, because of the interest and energy around generative AI and also the new capabilities, there's actually a lot of new opportunities that have emerged. First, as long as you can align your governance outcomes to help AI hit production sooner and with higher safety and reliability, your capabilities and your team's outcomes are going to get actually a lot of visibility. And that then helps governance because it actually finally gets funded. So as long as governance outcomes are helping AI hit production sooner, you essentially get that nice tailwind of top-down buy-in as well as bottom-up interest. And the second thing that is very interesting, which you all know, is that generative AI is showing a lot of promise in being able to automate a lot of the governance activities that we've previously found extremely hard to do by just throwing people at the problem. So whether it's describing things or finding things, there's a lot of promise in generative AI being able to do to automate some of that. So that leads us to this moment for DataHub, which is, we're smack in the middle of enabling modern data governance for everyone. And in this AI age, how can we capitalize on some of these opportunities and actually help the industry move forward quicker? Next slide. To do that, we usually talk about two things: how AI can help governance and how governance can help AI. Next slide. The kind of playbook that we usually follow is propose. So AI essentially suggests classification, documentation, and other governance primitives. We include the right humans to approve, essentially make sure that AI suggestions are actually correct. And then finally, once those approvals are in, we can then unlock automated enforcement, automated management, automated monitoring that essentially leads to a lot more sustainable governance primitives, a lot of sustainable governance initiatives, whether it is ensuring that your data documentation is kept up to date, which is kind of more cosmetic hygiene, but on the more serious side, ensuring that your data is being processed using the right privacy policies and using the right infrastructure. So moving on, the areas of focus that the DataHub project and the DataHub Cloud project have in common for using generative AI to help governance activities is really focused around three distinct pillars: helping documentation get 10 times better, so high quality, trusted, human readable documentation; being able to auto classify and improve sensitivity prediction for specific columns, features, also include business context in there; and then finally, quality, being able to determine, improve data quality by even determining what data quality controls should be used based on observed trends. So those are the areas of focus in terms of using AI to help governance get better. And we can kind of go through some quick screenshots of what that looks like in the product. First off is documentation. We've shared this with the community earlier as well. So DataHub Cloud v3.6 now has support for automated description generation using AI. This is available both at the table level as well as the column level. And then moving on to the next capability is support for generating tags and glossary terms. So you can bring your own taxonomy. You can locate the specific assets or the asset types that you care about, and then also include humans in the loop to ensure that the proposals are actually looked at by humans before, and by the right humans before they're actually approved. Moving on to the next thing, which is beyond tags and terms, which is more like data quality rules. We have, so these are kind of screenshots for what that looks like in the tag proposal workflow, as well as for column level tags and things like that. Moving on to data quality rules, we support the ability for AI-driven assertions, AI-driven proposals for freshness, volume, et cetera, and those are also allowing a lot of companies to essentially not have to spend a lot of manual labor in even defining what good looks like. So essentially, let AI do the work of looking at the data, looking at all the metadata, and proposing what good looks like. And then humans come in and say, yep, that is exactly what I want you to do, or maybe tweak it a little bit, and then off we are to the races. So that's kind of the journey for enabling, for AI enabling good governance. The future that we're going towards here, obviously from a discovery and understanding perspective, is the conversational piece. So whether you're a data consumer persona who just wants to understand what data you have and what data you should be using, or even enriching metadata on your own, we want to enable conversational interfaces for all of those use cases. Or whether you're a data governance persona who's basically just got tasked with implementing the AI Act, or implementing a convoluted policy that your legal team just dropped at your desk proverbially, you can basically include, we basically want to enable you to have conversational interfaces with metadata. And that allows you to understand what governance policies to even set up in the first place. Our North Star really is you upload a PDF for your compliance requirements that someone gave to you, and you're able to actually have a conversation with the graph to understand what policies you need to create, and then you're able to register those policies. And then you essentially get natural language for governance. That's kind of the dream that we're going towards. And that's all the stuff that AI can do to help governance go 10 times faster and be 10 times better. But what can we do to help AI? Because that's also a problem that execs care about. AI is going to hit production, and one of the big problems that people have is, I don't know what I have in production. I don't know if I'm allowed to use this model in production. I'm not sure if this model has been trained on the right data, et cetera, et cetera. So how can governance actually help AI? Now, to understand that, you first have to understand what AI governance actually needs. And AI governance actually brings in a lot of new needs. If you look at DataHub's own metadata graph, which is on the next slide, you'll see that we started off mostly driven by data governance needs. We had the data set, the table, the stream, the folder, columns, schemas, glossaries, tags. Then we had the BI assets. Then we had the data flow and data job assets. Then we had users. And then we had some data mesh concepts like domain and data products. Now we've data contracts and data quality assertions. And out of this entire large metadata graph, there are actually only two things that are in the graph that are oriented around AI. I don't know if you can spot them, but if you hit the next button, Maggie, you'll see them, the ML model and the feature. So two things that were added to the metadata model graph pretty early on, actually, 2021, I think. Summer of 2021 is when we added it. And it stayed there for a while, and when we look at questions over the last 3 years that we've been asked about in our DataHub Slack, a lot of questions are on business glossary, a lot of questions are on schemas and columns and tables, not as much about ML models and features. But in the more recent past, a lot of questions. People are integrating us with SageMaker, Feast, and all of these other newer technologies for machine learning, and saying we need more. But what does more look like? So let's go ahead and see what are the needs that AI governance actually has. And so that's the next slide after this, which is experiment tracking. ML model development requires a lot of experimentation, and that means you need to store your experiments and understand your experiments metadata, understand what training parameters you're using, understand what hyperparameters were used, which of these experiments actually resulted in an output that you're even shipping to production, et cetera, et cetera. And experiments are not just it, there's also models. So if you go to the next slide, we'll have model versioning and lineage as a super important need for the new age. We need complete model provenance tracking all the way from data sets to deployments. We need the ability to have a detailed version control with performance comparisons. And then finally, being able to get audit trail maintenance for regulatory compliance. There's a question about, whether so in terms of how we think about the evolution of the AI space, we see a lot of new needs coming in terms of new entities and new relationships being needed. So moving on to the next slide, feature stores, probably less useful, but prompts and embeddings, unstructured data, multimodal capabilities, AI-human interaction logs, being able to understand AI-specific data quality and validation rules. There's a ton more things that AI actually needs for the metadata platform to be able to actually represent everything that goes on in AI development to truly be able to help AI governance. And I wrote a blog post about it. If you scan the QR code, you can go read it. It's a long one, fair warning, but it really covers everything that we consider in scope for what would truly represent the metadata model extensions and capabilities for supporting AI governance within the expanse of the data catalog. So moving on to the next slide, it's not just about new things, it's also about different things. So if you look at the new challenges that we see for metadata infrastructure, it's really broken up into three parts. Part one, next slide, is a variety. So lots of new kinds of things have to be represented, collected, indexed, and stored. Second, versioning, being able to not just know that a new kind of thing exists, but also know that it previously existed as a different version. And then finally, velocity. Now, this is something that is unique, perhaps, to AI. AI models in production do produce a constant stream of metadata, and you actually want to ask questions that are very fine-grained. Like, on this point in time, a certain decision was made. Can you prove to me why this decision was made? Can you prove to me that decision made by this model at this point in time was made using data that was never trained on PII, for example, right? So the kind of velocity of metadata that you need to handle to be able to answer questions like that is very different from the kind of more batchy sense that data usually brings. So moving on to what we're doing about it, we are evolving to address all of these new challenges. The nice thing about DataHub is actually it's architected for real-time streams. It's architected for high scale. It's architected for extensibility. So that means we are able to evolve to address these new challenges at a pretty reasonable and fast rate. Maggie talked about that comprehensive catalog comparison that the Hoodie team did earlier this week. If you read into it, you'll understand some of the details about why DataHub's foundations allow it to evolve so quickly to address these new challenges. But what are the things we're building? So step one, next slide, an AI asset registry. So that includes, like I said, we already had models and features, and I'll talk about how we're improving those, but also support for prompts, functions, embeddings, unstructured data, et cetera, et cetera. Next, versions. So versions are a big important thing, and we're taking our time doing it right. The core capability will allow us to support externally versioned artifacts, semantic versioning, date versioning, custom versioning schemes, as well as relationships across versions. So that way you'll be able to answer questions like a specific version of a model was trained on a specific version of a table, and what parameters were used for it. And that gives you kind of end-to-end lineage capabilities and end-to-end outcomes. And finally, compliance monitoring is a huge and important problem. We want to enable AI as well as data processors to be able to report what they're doing. So for example, when a deletion operator goes in and deletes data on behalf of a user who came in and says, please delete my data, or when a specific kind of data management operation was done, we want to basically create a spec for how these operations will be reported up to a central metadata hub. And that allows for policies to start getting monitored so that I can answer questions like, can I prove to an auditor that we have always been in compliance with our commitments to our members when it comes to them getting their data deleted on time, or them being able to get their data back for themselves. So we plan to create an open spec for all of the data management operations to get reported, and then support automated reporting and aggregations that we build on top of that to report on adherence to certain compliance policies. And it will be open and extensible, so you can extend it for your own needs. And so the future that we envision is essentially DataHub as this unifying control plane sitting across production systems, ingestion transform systems, lake warehouse systems, BI systems, and AI systems, and then enabling outcomes that straddle discovery use cases, governance and compliance use cases, as well as change management and day-to-day development use cases that span data quality as well as data development. With that, you might be wondering, first of all, when is this coming, and what are the first things that we're going to see as part of the open source project? And glad to announce that we are a few things, just a few weeks away from releasing a bunch of these capabilities. So moving on to a couple of slides after this, what's coming soon? First off is versionings. So we're working on supporting versions for everything. And that involves, externally versioned artifacts, semantic versioning, et cetera. You will soon be able to register multiple versions of the same data set or AI model. And this is what it kind of looks like in the cloud product in terms of the UI look and feel. But a lot of these capabilities in terms of the metadata model and the foundational platform capabilities are of course going to be open source. So you'll be able to register version data sets, register version models, and also see those differences in the UI as well. And of course, that's not all. We talked about the AI ecosystem bringing in lots of new requirements, experiments, runs, models. These are all important things that are important to really capture well. And you can take a DataHub and MLflow's integration as a kind of a poster child for what a good integration or a good representation might look like. We, of course, support SageMaker as well as other systems. And so we're working really hard on improving our metadata model capabilities when it comes to experiments, runs, and models, and building better and more seamless integration between systems like MLflow. So a quick couple of slides that show you what those look like. If you're not familiar with MLflow, you don't have to worry. In general, the concepts of machine learning frameworks tend to be similar. You run experiments. Experiments include training runs, and then training runs sometimes produce models. Those models usually sometimes get deployed to production. Sometimes they never get deployed to production, but you want to know the difference. And then finally, you need to understand how things are related to each other. So moving on to the next slide. These are a couple of slides that just show you what the MLflow UI looks like. So that gives you a sense of what a data science or a ML practitioner-oriented experience looks like. You need to be able to see what your experiments are, what are the runs within them, which ones failed, which ones worked successfully, et cetera. So Maggie, you can go through some of these slides really quickly. We can look at runs and those kind of things in the MLflow UI. But let's look at what DataHub does with those concepts today. Today, we have the concept of models, and they are kind of just basic things that exist. You can see the model name, you can see the model description, but that's pretty much about it. When you go into the model entity itself and you go to the next page, you can actually see versions of the model. We model them slightly differently. We call them ML groups, and then we have ML models. But fundamentally, you have the logical concept of a ML model group, and then you have the specific versions that can be registered. But if you look at this particular listing, for example, there's not a lot of information that screams out at you. All you see are names and maybe descriptions, but you're not able to truly understand which of these models is really the right one for me to look at, which model is actually serving in production, et cetera. So moving on to And when you go into the specific model version entity page, you can see some more details, but really that's pretty much it. So what we're working on right now is actually a lot more improvements to that specific area. So after our changes are done, we're about to raise a PR over the next couple of weeks. You'll actually be able to say individual runs as a separate entity itself in the graph. So moving on, you'll be able to see what the model looks like after we've made our changes. You'll be able to see a model group. And then when you click into it, a lot more details. You'll be able to see when it was created, last modified, who it was created by, and you'll also be able to see a lot of detail about specific model versions. So the specific version of the model, when it was registered, what version tags does it have, what are the aliases that it is known under, as well as description. So a lot more information right in your face, basically. Moving on, you'll also be able to see at a model level information about the source training runs that were used to produce it. And of course, that then leads to the ability to look at lineage. Moving on to the next page. Yeah, you'll be able to see essentially end-to-end lineage all the way from your input data set to all of the training runs that were that used it, to all of the models and output data sets that came out of it, so that you can truly answer at a fine-grained level, did this model ever use this particular data set when it was being trained? We'll also add support for experiments as a concept in the graph. And then you'll be able to navigate from experiments to training runs and also look at status of each individual training run on its own. So upcoming connector improvements are coming to MLflow, but of course, these will be API improvements. So if you're running your in-house ML orchestrator or ML framework, you can just start using our SDK to emit a lot of this metadata straight to us, and you'll be able to establish lineage between data sets, runs, and models at a fine-grained level, and also see a lot more interesting information in the UI straight up. So essentially, we're trying to bring together data observability, ML observability, as well as ML governance in the same platform. Cool. And that's all I had. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Maggie.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Shashanka. All right, so we are going to move on to our case study from the team over at Grab. And as I mentioned, they pre-recorded the session given the very large time zone difference. So let me get this set up for us. And I need to make sure that I share my sound. Okay. Sorry, guys, just 1 second. All right.
Hey everyone.
Can
First,
you
we
all
would
hear
like to
that?
thank Maggie, Shashanka, and the entire team at iPro for giving us the opportunity to speak at this town hall. Due to the time difference, as we are based in Singapore, we had to pre-record this video. We appreciate your understanding and are excited to share what we are doing at Grab and AI with you. Let's dive right in. I'm Amanda, and I'm part of the Metadata Management, Data Quality, and Business Intelligence team here at Grab. Quite a mouthful, I know. For those who may not be familiar, Grab is the leading super app in Southeast Asia, offering ride-hailing, food delivery, and digital payment services across 8 countries, approximately serving 40 million users each month. Before we begin, a quick note. I may use Hubble and DataHub interchangeably throughout this presentation. At Grab, we refer to DataHub as Hubble, and our AI features are branded under the name Hubble IQ. Today's presentation is divided into 2 main parts. First, I will walk you through the improvements we've made to our search experience. Following that, my colleague Yucheng will take over to discuss the enhancements in our documentation. Let's begin with the problem statement. For those of you familiar with DataHub, you'll know that the search experience and the ranking of search results are powered by Elasticsearch. This system performs well for keyword searches, presenting and ranking results by matching the keywords in the database with the keywords used in the user's query. However, this also means that users need to know the exact keywords to type in order to get the desired results. And unfortunately, not everyone knows the precise keywords to use, which often leads to users being unable to find what they are looking for. We began with a straightforward approach, exploring how we could utilize Elasticsearch as is to enhance the ranking of search results. We discovered that DataHub conveniently allows customization of search rankings through a simple YAML file. However, the limitation is that the information used for ranking must already be present in the entities documents. To address this, we had already been developing our own customized certification processes for critical assets and tagging them within DataHub. Additionally, we started tagging high-usage assets out of the 200,000 tables cataloged in our data lake. You can see these tags in the provided screenshot. We've also identified which schemas were more commonly used. And lastly, we deprioritized deprecated assets and assets created solely for development or testing purposes. By consolidating all this information, we were able to create a relatively small YAML file for our search customization, as shown on the right, which has significantly improved our search experience. However, keyword search can only take you so far. As I mentioned earlier, users don't often know the precise keywords to use, and that's when we started exploring semantic search, specifically one powered by Glean. Glean is an advanced search and discovery platform designed to help organizations find information across various internal sources, and Grab was actually already utilizing Glean. Glean also allows us to customize cataloging metadata and leveraging information available from other sources like Slack and Confluence to provide comprehensive search results. We began by ingesting the metadata we had in Hubble. We formatted this information into a markdown format and indexed it in Glean. On Hubble, we then presented a semantic search summary of the user's query, supplemented by the improved keyword search results, all on the same screen. In this screenshot, you can see an example where the user is querying for transport rights. The first section presents a list of tables that matches the user's query, along with comprehensive explanations detailing their usage. At the bottom, you'll notice that the remaining search results still appear as they traditionally would. An additional benefit of this approach is that the enhanced search experience is also available on Slack, powered by Glean. As shown in the screenshot, users can interact with the Hubble IQ bot directly within Slack, making it easier to access relevant information seamlessly. And thank you for all your attention. This concludes my segment on search improvements. I hope you found it insightful. And I'll now hand it over to Yicheng, who will guide you through the next part of our presentation on documentation.
Well, thanks, Amanda. I'm Yicheng. I will present the rest of our Hubble IQ work. To continue, this led to another problems. The first one is the searching performance may rely heavily on the documentation ingest to the Glean platform. A bad documentation may result in a bad searching experience for users. Another one is the data owner often neglect to create a comprehensive data documentation, which will cause our data documentation coverage is relatively low at that time. So we propose another solution. We provide the LLM-powered data documentation generation function on top of DataHub. How it works, actually it contains two parts. The first part, we will ingest the useful metadata of a dataset to a DataHub to help the LLM model to generate the documentation, like sample data, published query, and also verified documentations. Another part is the generation part. We support generate the column description and the table documentation, and also the quality score and the suggestions are working in progress. So for the ingestion part of the metadata to DataHub, so the first thing we do is we leverage Trino to periodically querying the sample data for our PAT tables. This will help the AI model to know what is the exact content inside the dataset. Another thing we ingest is the superset published query. So in this case, the AI model can analyze the use case, the actual use case by user to decide how to draft the use case part inside the data documentation. The last thing we ingest is we gathering our Grab internal platform metadata. This definitely will help the GPT to know the data scope, the business domain of the data set, and also the logic definition if possible. And for the documentation generation in DataHub, so we leverage a tool called Landsmith to help us to manage all the prompt-related stuff, like the versioning, development, and also the evaluation. We have an API service which will receive the generation request from DataHub. After the API service receives the request, it will pull all the required metadata from DataHub and then pull the required prompts from Landsmith as well. And then the API would run the AI model to generate the data documentation. After it's done, it will ingest the generated documentation and the scores and the suggestion, if possible, back to DataHub. After that, user only need to review or edit if necessary. So here is a short demo of how we do the column description on DataHub. So after you land on the schema page of the dataset, there is a button like to generate the column description. After you click on it, you wait for the description was injected back. Then you can see the column description in each column. Then what you need to do is you just need to accept, edit, or reject based on your requirement. And this is the table documentation generation. So when you land it on the documentation tab, if there is no documentation, we will show a generate button. After you click on the generate button, you need to wait for several seconds after the generation is done. So after the generation is done, you can see there is a tag AI generated on top of our generated documentation. This tag will help the user to identify whether the documentation is generated by AI or human. After that, similarly, user only need to scroll down to accept, edit, or reject based on the requirement. So that's all our demo and our HubIQ work. So the impact we made is to build the foundation for our use case-driven data discovery. We achieve a great number of documentation generated by AI inside our certified tables. And also, we make the data discovery easy. We achieve a significant increase for the number of semantic search events, and also we observe a strong engagement. We observe also a high increase in our entity click interaction inside the searching result. After that, we definitely have many challenges to face. Currently, we are focusing on the two challenges or problems right now. So the first one is how we evaluate and validate the LLM generated documentation, whether the generated documentation is with a high accuracy or high quality. So this in the current user flow, the accuracy and the quality are decided by user. If the user decides the generated documentation are accurate and with relatively good quality, user can accept. If not, the user can make necessary addition to the documentation. So in this case, we want to further to lower the human effort inside this generated documentation thing. We want to leverage the AI as well as the feedback loop to help us evaluate and validate the generated documentation. Another challenge is we want to improve the user flow when interact with LLM. So in the current flow, user will edit the generate documentation on top of it. But this is not optimal flow. In the optimal way, what if the user have a lot of content to add or a lot of content to edit? User can also leverage GPT for the help on that. So why not we build an interaction flow between the user and LLM to help the user to teach the LLM to help them to iterate the documentation until meet their final requirement. That's all from our presentation. Thanks for your listening.
All right, so we have a few minutes left. I wanted to close things out with a demo or an overview and demo of the structured properties work that I referenced during our project updates. So there's a chance, again, I am a fast talker. I recognize this. I try to reel it in, but my brain moves at a rapid pace, and this is it's just what happens. But so I'll try to slow down the pace. We may go a few minutes over. If you need to drop, absolutely fine. We always post our recordings of our town hall on our YouTube channel. All right, so we're going to go through what I'm referring to as next level metadata customization. Before we do that, let's talk about kind of the building blocks of kind of metadata curation or metadata enrichment within DataHub. So currently within DataHub, there are 4 kind of ways that that we support kind of bringing order or kind of categorizing or curating your resources. So number 1, we have glossary terms. This is a really useful way to kind of capture the lexicon of your organization. Maybe it's defining how a specific metric is actually calculated, what it represents, how it, and kind of informs strategy within the business. You can also set relationships between those terms. We have support for tags. These are super flexible, just kind of like high or like ad hoc organization where you can generate tags on the fly, and it's useful to just kind of like, tag your resources with context, so you can kind of sort and filter by those. We also have support for domains. So this is generally used to represent the logical organization of your company. So you could think about a domain as being maybe the marketing team or the accounting team, or, maybe there's a specific project or initiative that's underway. And this also kind of goes along with kind of data mesh principles. And then within that, we have data products, which are curated sets of data assets for a specific use case. So you could think about this as maybe there's an AI model running in production. What are all of the components that feed into that? This is also where you can start to establish your kind of usage guidelines, what it's meant to be used for, who owns it, who's kind of setting and adhering to those SLAs. So these are kind of our 4 main ways of helping folks really manage their metadata. But what we have found over time is that sometimes these aren't flexible or precise enough. And really what folks are looking for is a way to establish kind of a clear, validated, or a typed and validated way of categorizing their resources. So what we have introduced is what we would refer to as structured properties. This is, they're basically typed and validated fields. We'll go through some examples of what that means. And we're also rolling out customized display preferences, as well as search functionality. So let's dig in a little bit. Structured properties are customizable fields that you can attach to the vast majority of DataHub assets. You can think of them as kind of smart labels, just kind of taking the flexible labels that we have and also glossary terms that we have, and kind of taking it one step further, where we're saying this structured property has a specific type. So it could be a string, it could be a number, it could be a date. And then optionally, you can set your controlled vocabulary, so you have consistency in how those items are defined. And then we have a lot of opportunities to configure how how that information is displayed and filtered within DataHub. So everything I'm going to walk you through, just for context, this can be applied to kind of the typical data assets within DataHub. So data sets, columns, dashboards, charts, pipelines, all of those fun things. But you can also apply these, to glossary terms, domains, and data products to kind of boost things a little bit further. So I'm going to actually move into a quick demo. Please pray to the demo gods for me, if you wouldn't mind. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the DataHub Cloud UI, but everything that I'm going to demo to you will be available within to open source within the next release that's coming up. So everything here is something that you will be able to work through. So from our govern dropdown, we're going to head over to our structured properties tab. And this is where we'll have our new kind of structured properties admin experience. This is where you're actually defining what these properties are, the type of field that it should be, the allowed values, what it should be applied to, etc. So for this use case, let's say that our teams are finally putting some rigor around how we describe the development stage of a data set. So maybe it's a draft, so it's kind of a work in progress. Maybe it's in review or ready for review. Maybe it's in production, and maybe it's been retired. If you went the route with tags, you could always do that. But what folks tend to find is that there's a lot of variability in how that tag is defined. So one team may say, this is a draft, where someone else may call it a work in progress. Or if it's in review, some might say it's ready for review, under review, in review, whatever. And so there's variability in kind of how those are established. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to create a property called lifecycle stage. It'd be good if I could spell. We'll give it a quick description. We'll say stage of typical dev cycle. And here's where we're going to decide what type of property is this. So our options out of the box are going to be of type text. Anything that has a list just basically means that you can add multiple values to your asset. It can be a number, it can be an entity, so another asset within DataHub. You can have rich text, or you can have date. So what we're going to do is we're going to treat this as text. If you leave this as is, then anyone can add any text value to the asset. But what we want to do is we really want to standardize this definition. So we're going to say that there are 4 stages. There's draft, there's review, there's prod, and there's, we'll say legacy or retired. So now what we have is our allowed values that folks can choose from. And now we decide what types of properties within DataHub should this relate to. So for this example, we're going to go ahead and say that data sets can have this value, and then maybe dashboards and charts. So now if we went ahead and created this, we could go ahead through that flow. But here what we can do is actually start to set our display preferences. So sometimes there's, maybe there's information that you want to categorize on a data asset, but you actually don't want it to be visible to others. Maybe because it's going to add more confusion than provide value, or maybe it's actually sensitive information and you want to have more restriction around it. You can actually hide that property. But what we're going to do here is we're going to say that this property should be searchable. We should highlight it in the asset bar, and we should show this as an asset badge. And we'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. So now we have created our lifecycle stage, and let's go and define let's go add this to our favorite pet details table. So in our pet details screen, we're going to head over to the properties tab. And what you'll see here is a set of structured properties. You can tell that it's a structured property because it has an edit button over here. And then you're also going to have information in here about that's kind of coming through ingestion. But we're going to add in our lifecycle stage. So we just created this property. And now what you see is those 4 kind of predetermined or predefined values that I can choose from. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is in prod. And now, because of the visibility or the display preferences that we set, I now have prod up here in what we refer to as our asset badge. And likewise, we have our lifecycle stage available in the asset sidebar. So really what this does is it elevates these values outside of being kind of hidden within this properties tab. So you can have these kind of like more customized contextual resources visible either on the sidebar, in your asset badge, or neither, or both, whichever you want to go around. So then what we will also do is take a look at how this appears in the search experience. So again, because we have added prod to this asset badge, this is going to be displayed in the search card. So again, this is going to be a really valuable way to have that customized, like your users the best, your organization the best. What's going to be a meaningful signal to them that this is a relevant resource for them. So maybe instead of the lifecycle stage, maybe you want to have something around the asset being certified or a quality score, whatever that might be. We currently support displaying 1 badge on an asset. kind of preview there. So the other thing that we did here was we enabled searching by this. So what you'll see is under the More dropdown, we now actually have our lifecycle stage. Of course, I've only applied this to one resource, but we can go in here and actually start to filter by this. So again, this is, if you think about this from kind of like the tagging approach before, if let's say, you know, before teams were saying that, or teams were tagging data sets as being in production by saying in prod or running in production or live or whatever that might be, you would have to find all of those relevant tags and kind of cobble that together. This gives you this like really clean way to search for that kind of validated and that normalized way of talking about your assets. So hopefully this gives a little bit of context here. Like I said, this will be available in DataHub 0.15.0, which should be out by the end of the year. And if you have any questions, please let me know. It looks like there's some activity in chat, so I will catch up there. But yeah, so we're super excited about it. Would love any feedback or any thoughts on how we can make it better. And we'll stick around for a few minutes if folks have questions. But otherwise, happy 2024. My goodness, these years fly by. I can't believe it. It's like 7 degrees here in Chicago, Fahrenheit. So maybe that's negative 40 degrees centigrade. I don't know. But I hope everybody has a wonderful remainder to the year. Happy holidays. Sending love to your friends, families, loved ones. And yeah, like I said, we'll stick around with some if anybody has questions, but otherwise, we'll see you all at the next one.
Maggie, I have a very important question.
What's up?
When is the next town hall?
When is the next town hall?
Yeah.
Are you asking for us to give a preview of what that's going to be?
I don't know. Maybe.
Well, generally speaking, our town halls are the last Thursday of every month. Of course, this month is different because it's the holidays. But we're planning a very special celebration on January 30th to mark the passage of time for the DataHub community. Is that vague enough?
That's big enough. Okay. I'll mark my calendar.
Oh man. All right. Looks like there's no other questions. Thank you all so much for your time and your attention. We appreciate you, and we'll see you at the next one. Adios.